Welcome to Warp Curry. My name's Gayer Patel.
And I'm Yogi Patel.
It's been a while since we've done this. Couple weeks now, a month almost.
I think it's been more than a month. It's been crazy.
Yeah, there's
Um,
a lot that's going on, but we've been busy.
yeah, busy, definitely busy with kids, life, work, traveling, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I know you've been busy, and I was shocked to hear that you attended a Modi event.
Oh, yeah, I was shocked that I even went, but yeah, I got a link from somebody, and I was at my computer, and so I was like, since I'm at the computer, let me register for it. Because if I wasn't at my computer, there's a good chance I wouldn't have registered. It just I happened to be there when it came, so let me register. They approved it. It went through some process. I don't know what the process is, but approved it. And I was like, all right. There was a time I contemplated still not going, but then I heard other friends were going. So I was like, look, I'm going to see other people if nothing else. And then decided to go. Didn't realize that I'd have to be up at 5:30 in the morning to drive to Nassau Coliseum. When I first heard it, I always thought it was in East Rutherford, which is like 45 minutes away. It ended up being like an hour and a half away, but fine. I got there. Um, I went there more just because I know Modi a little bit in the sense of some media and stuff, but I don't know enough about Indian politics to uh, know, how well he's done or not. I mean, you know, I went there, I sat, there was about 10, 15,000 people. I don't know exactly what the stadium holds, but it was packed. And it was like a rock concert. Like it was crazy. Like they had artists, they had musicians, that one big thing in Instagram right now, Big Dogs by Hanuman Kind. That guy showed up. There was this I don't know his name, but this white guy that's on Instagram that's huge that does dances, Bollywood dances, him and his son. And the guy's like 50, 60, 70
Yeah,
years
yeah, I've
old.
seen his videos. They're
Right. So
awesome.
he
Yeah.
was there and he came out of one of the songs and stuff. So it was interesting. And then people everywhere, and then Modi comes out. I mean, it was as if Jay-Z walked out in that room. Like I've gone to those concerts, and it was just as wild when he walked out.
Wow.
And he talked for a good 45 minutes, and he talked in Hindi, so I didn't know all of it, but I know enough, and so it was inspirational. I mean, every few seconds, people are cheering at everything he says, right? But he brought up a bunch of points that were easy to understand, which is the things that India is doing right now in terms of technology, cleanliness, financially. He was somewhere he said something to the point of India soon going to be like top two
Yeah.
financial powers in the world, and you can see it. I mean, whether it gets there now or when, but you and I have experienced what's happened in the last 20 years or 10 years in India.
That's so true. Like, no one can deny that. You look at numbers and people say that, like, okay, you can fudge numbers, you can make something seem, prettier than it actually is. But literally, for the last 20, 30 years, we've been going to India. And I feel like every year we go there, we're just like, holy crap, this is completely different. And there's so many improvements from infrastructure, from politics to education to cleanliness across the board. Like there's this, you definitely see an improvement.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the first time I went, and I hadn't gone. I came to America in like 81. And after that, I hadn't really gone until almost like 2007 when I was about to get married. And I went there. And at that time, it was like, you got to be careful at the airports. You got to be careful, when you're out about in town. And then years later, you go to the airport, and it's like going to any other airport in the world or in America. You go through, and everything is, safe.
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of these changes. The cleanliness is a huge one, right? We've seen even people we know there financially. There's a lot more people that are doing a lot better. I mean,
I have sorry to cut you off, but like in the last 15 years, right? 10 to 15 years. I remember, prior to that, when I went to India, and if I was getting, buying something, my cousins from India would be like, dude, you're just wasting too much money. Like, why are you spending X amount of money? I'm just like, it's whatever, because I'm converting dollars to rupees. Now, in the last 5 years, I'm going to India and I'm looking at things in the stores and I'm like, oh, this is too expensive. And my
Yeah.
cousins from there are just like, dude, you're too cheap. The
Yeah.
tables have turned completely.
Yeah, it's hard to buy stuff in India when you go from here thinking that you're converting, but I mean, it's, you know,
So there,
people.
I guess what I'm trying to say is their economic situation has gotten far better than it was, 15 years ago and prior.
Yeah, I feel like people there are spending a lot more money than we do.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to say Modi is the best. Like any politician, they have good and bad. And anytime you're selecting a candidate, it's always the lesser of two evils, right? They're never perfect. So I'm not trying to tout them as that. But you definitely have, and the media loves that. The media loves pushing the polarity.
Yeah.
There'll be certain outlets that are just complete pro Modi, and there'll be certain outlets that are completely against Modi. Even recently, like the Canadian government, and they're saying Modi was involved in, you know, either assassinating something or something like that. At this point, I really don't know what or who to believe, because time and time again, even in US politics, in European politics, even Canadian politics, you read things from the media, and if you take it at face value, a lot of times it's complete BS and it just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. And you can tell that people have these preconceived messages that they're trying to push out, like the New York Times, for example, they're always going to be liberal no matter what, irrespective. Like they're not going to write anything good about Trump. And likewise, there's going to be Fox News, who will never write anything good about the liberals, or Biden or Kamala Harris or anything like that. So you
Yeah.
always have that polarity. And it's really hard to know what the heck is true because it's so one-sided.
You brought up the New York Times, and unfortunately, I didn't read the thing about Canada, but the New York Times, we have read a very important article from them, which we've, I think, highly disagree, and so I think it's a good time to talk about that because there's a lot in there um, that we want to talk about, and I don't think we ever really thought we were going to ever talk about this, but I think it's time because um,
So we're talking about this now.
I think we're going to talk about it now because I'm on social media. I've listened to podcasts, other ones, and there's a lot of them that are talking about this New York Times article, but with a very different perspective. Now, if I didn't know anything about BAPS and I just saw that article as somebody that doesn't know anything about Hindu temple or this or that article looks very negative in the sense, right?
Yeah.
And so what I think we should do is we have experience with BAPS. We know we've volunteered there. We've done a lot of things. So, yeah, I always wanted to kind of talk to somebody about it, right? Because they said a lot of things about Modi in there, and it didn't make
Yep.
sense to me when I first read it as
Yep.
to why that's being brought up into this. Now, I know there may be some issues in India with Modi and what they call, what the Dalits are and that caste system and stuff. But they try to then put all this other stuff in there that really has nothing to
It's
do with it.
so that article is so you can rip it apart at so many different levels. It's complete crap. In
Yeah.
all honesty, right? And I hate being so critical of media, because I'd like to think that, if Fox News is saying something negative about the liberal media or positive about right media, or right folks, then you figure that there's some truth and they're just embellishing it. This just seems like complete crap, like
Yeah.
out of left field. Like it doesn't make sense. I have no idea why. Number one, if those allegations are true, what does Modi have to do with this? Period. It has nothing to do with it.
It's again that part. I don't know if we're ever going to get a real answer as to why they put all that. Like,
Yeah. In addition to Modi have nothing to do with that incident, right? Many politicians get involved or visit or have to interact with many organizations. It just is what it is, right? If you have like the American Red Cross, right? I'm sure Donald Trump has interacted with them. I'm sure Biden has interacted with them, right? There's just institutions or organizations around the world where whichever political party is in power, whichever person has been elected, you naturally want to maintain good relationships with the government, because BAPS's job as an organization is to do good to society, and that's what their goal is, right? So whether you're in Canada, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in England, etc., many countries in Abu Dhabi, in all these countries, UAE, around the world, they have relationships with the government. They come to visit the temples and everything. So Prince Charles has come, Sunak has come, Trudeau has come, Blair, um, Bill Clinton, all these people, right? Now, if Bill Clinton visits the temple, and then after you find out he's had, certain interactions with certain White House staff, that has nothing to do with the organization. You can't put
Yeah.
those two articles together.
Yeah, I mean, a
So it's
lot of
just,
people have visited, politicians, Hollywood stars, Bollywood stars, sports entertainers, and they come because one, you've seen everybody knows this. I mean, millions of visitors have visited temples across the world. A lot of them have come to the BAPS temples, and obviously the one that we're talking about here in Robbinsville, it's one of the most beautiful temples, right? No,
yeah.
I don't think anyone can disregard that, and so they want to come and see it. We've had everybody there, but that doesn't mean that because they've come there that they're one of the devotees or followers or anything. Right now, some come more, some come less. Some have come once, and some politicians have come many times.
And they all
Um,
take inspiration from there, right?
yes,
So it's not like, you know, I'm sure Tony Blair came and he said great things about the organization and he took inspiration from his visit.
yep,
Prince Charles took inspiration from his visit. The Sheikh in Abu Dhabi took inspiration from his visit. In the same way, Modi would come and he would take inspiration from his
yeah,
visit. So
like
just because they say words and say, this organization has inspired me, yeah, the organization has inspired them, but it has nothing to do with the article that the New York Times was trying to write, which to me is just they clearly have some other agenda
yeah.
going
I
on.
mean, they went as far as saying something about BAPS gave some large amount of money for Ram Mandir in support of Modi's election. I was like, no, BAPS gave money for Ram Mandir in support of Ram Bhagwan's birthplace, right? Building a
That's the
temple on Ram
dumbest
Bhagwan's
thing.
birthplace.
That is like whoever wrote that article, like I don't know what they're thinking. They just threw it together on a bunch of post-its and a 5-year-old reviewed it and they published it. I swear to God.
It
Because
is crazy because, like,
BAPS is a Hindu Sanatan organization, right? We believe in Hinduism, right? The Ram Mandir is a temple that is at the location of Ram Bhagwan's birthplace.
yeah, I
So
mean,
a
it's
Hindu organization, just like hundreds and thousands of other Hindu organizations, all contributed to this because it's so significant within our organization. How do you tie that to something else? It literally makes zero sense. It could have been Manmohan Singh, who was a prime minister at that time. It could have been Indira Gandhi, who was a prime minister at that time. And I guarantee you the same amount of money would have been contributed to the Ram Mandir because it's a Hindu organization
yeah,
contributing to a Hindu place of significance.
yeah. I mean, it's. I'm sure it took a lot of money and a lot of people's effort, and whether it was a single donor that gave something or organizations that gave something. I mean, that was just an odd, thing in that article I read. And then, it's anybody that knows BAPS knows that we've done many things across the world, from the smallest thing. Like the other day, I heard there was during COVID, there was a husband and wife where the husband passed away during COVID with cancer. So she was by herself. She must have been around 70 something years old. So the volunteers of BAPS knew this. So they were helping her out daily with just talking to her because now she had nobody else at home. And because it was COVID, no one could exactly like stay with her, but they would bring food to her, groceries, whatever she needed. If she had an appointment, they took her to that. Um, Something that's, one single person that they didn't have to, they did. And then we know, something as big as the war in Ukraine, when it first started and people were fleeing Ukraine, BAPS sent people there to help those people that had to come out, providing water, food, whatever it was. We have friends that we know that also went there.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole spectrum of things that BAPS has helped with. And it's seen, daily. And it's how to try and put that into any political situation doesn't make any sense to me. But
Yeah, it's just complete crap. It doesn't make sense. And you're right. The organization does so many good things that people love to look past for whatever reason. but it's clear as day as to what the organization does, where it contributes. Like you could just quickly Google and see all these things that the organization does, from schools to hospitals to relief camps for natural disasters, that kind of stuff, and things that are good for the world in the future as well, like the Nature's Conservancy, right? For years, the organization donated money to planting trees all around the world. So there's so many good things the organization does. Um, and that's just, the Ram Mandir and all these are just contribute another area where the organization contributes.
Yep. But I think the main part of this article, I guess, is what we need to talk about, which is the artisans, because that's at the end of the day, that's who was affected the most, right?
So before we talk about that, you go into your experience that day because you were there that day. Whatever this New York Times article is highlighting, I want you to talk about your experience, because we're lucky that you're on this podcast and you happen to be there, like right place, right time. You were like right there in the mix of this action. So you have firsthand experience as to what transpired that day.
So the only reason I have this experience is crazy. Your mother-in-law called me in the morning and she's like, she was one of the volunteers that was there. I think it was 3 days or 9 days at that time. And she called me and she's like, they're not letting us into the gates, into the temple. And I'm like, she's asking me why. And at that time, I'd volunteered for a year and a half, but at that time I'd started my business. So I wasn't planning on going that day. I was at home. So I called somebody that was one of my friends that was volunteering, and I asked him. And he's like, there's something like 200, 300 FBI agents that have raided the place. And I'm like, what? And at first I didn't believe him. So I called your mother-in-law and I was like, from what he's saying is the FBI is there for some reason. And then she told me, she's like, yeah, that's what I just heard. So then I was like, well, let me go find out what is really happening. Because again, it's a large construction site. So
Yeah.
maybe something happened, people get hurt, it happens. But just like I do construction and we deal with small, big injuries all the time and stuff happens. So I was like, maybe it was something like that. And maybe it wasn't the FBI. Maybe it was just, police and stuff, and they couldn't tell who it was. So I go there and get to the gate, and there's a whole line of cars on the left before the gate and a bunch of people just standing there. And the gate is closed. And there's one truck there that I know is one of the volunteers that was here long term. So I went up to him with my car and I was like, what's going on? And he's like, I don't know, but and he said the same thing, around 200 FBI agents inside. So I was like, man, something happened. But at that time, we still had no idea what happened, right? So he's like, why don't you just hang out? So it was literally me, him, and I think one of our other volunteer security guys outside. So he's like, just hang out, because in case, we need something, or, maybe it's over soon, whatever. So then eventually he goes inside of the gate and he's like, I'm going to see if, any updates and stuff. He's like, you just hang out here, because in case anybody from the FBI needs to go in or out, you got to let us know. We'll open the gate. Everybody else, you're going to have to just turn them around and say, we're closed for the day. Visitors that might have been coming or whatever. So I stood out there, and at that time, it was me in normal clothing and my car, which was a Volvo at the time. And I had nothing to do with security or anything of that sort at that time. So I'm just standing there, literally just seeing if a car rolls up. I got to ask them what they're doing and whatever. And a couple hours later, somebody sent me a Twitter feed, and they said it was some media thing, and it's like tight security at the BAPS temple, and it's a picture of me in my car. Like right then, I was just like, this is insane. There's a picture of me who does construction, who's volunteered as construction, and they're calling it tight security. And that was just odd to me. And then, I think around 10:30 or so, somebody sent the link for the New York Times article. Like, mind you, the FBI is still inside, everybody's still inside, and the article came out. And I read the article, and I was just like, this is the craziest thing. It's still happening, and
Yeah.
this long article.
This is what irks me the most. There is clear collusion There's clear nonsense going on. How does the New York Times have this article ready? I mean, no one went in and out of those gates other
Yeah,
than FBI agents, right? How did the New York Times have an article ready within hours or maybe even sooner and publish it before like the organization even knew what was going on? They knew what was going on. So
yeah.
it's like
There's
clearly the FBI and the New York Times were in bed together or doing something, because there's no way this would have been known otherwise. Like it
it was
takes time for things to unfold.
it was crazy, and I read the article, and it was talking about like the artisans were imprisoned with gates all around, and you know,
So
and I could
stupid.
say this now because I would have been hesitant a few months ago, but I didn't want to give away the fact that there wasn't gates. But at that time, anybody could go in any direction to almost 360 degrees and be out. Right? You can get to
People need to
my
put
house from walking. You can,
their money where their mouth is. Go on Google Maps, and you could go back in time, and even today, in all honesty, and you could look at the site map, and you could see where there were gates. You can see where their residences were. You could see where people were staying, and you can see that no one was fenced in.
yeah.
No one was being held. Like you could have run in 20 different directions if you
I
felt
mean,
that you were, you know.
at this time, because the temple is done and there aren't any more artisans because the temple is done and all the main stonework is all done. So at this time, there's gates. But where you look, if you look at the map, there's where the trailers are still there because we still have lots of volunteers coming. There's a road that went straight out the back through this farm field, and you could have been out.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the gate you're talking about is just a perimeter fence across like hundreds of acres.
Yeah, I
It's
mean
not like
now it's a
it's not around the residences where it's like a
no, no,
jail
no.
cell, you know?
You could again, if somebody really wanted to get out, you could still get out now. But the gates
And that is
were
even recent. At the time of this happening, none of that even existed.
no, no. The reason the gates are there, and when I say recent, it's like the last month, and it's because of what you said, the Canada stuff, the Khalistan. In Long Island, we have a BAPS temple. In Sacramento, we have BAPS temple, and they were vandalized, and so
Right.
that's why right after that they started putting up these gates. Now,
Right.
again, the gates are there to keep people from coming in. It's a security measure, which many other places across the world have. So, but at that time when all these artisans were here, I could tell you for sure because I've walked from my house onto the property, right? Until as recent as a month ago, I could ride my electric bike from my house to the property and back. Now I can't do that because of the issues that are caused by
Right.
the Khalistan, whatever it is, which again, I don't know exactly,
Whoever's
but
vandalizing.
right. And so
Yeah.
that's why the gates, like at that time, to say that is even ridiculous because even from the front gate, even if that gate is closed, you just got to walk 40 feet to the left and then go around where they only finished half the stone gate that's going across. And you could walk
Yeah.
literally onto the next property and out the door. And so
You could
that there's
literally
a,
walk to the street from any direction of the property without anyone knowing and just
yeah,
walk right out. There's
yeah.
no way that this is,
I mean, there's
you
been
know,
times we've had people come in the middle of the night. And that's why we've had these security volunteers just to be like, dude, you can't be on the property. It's a private
y- you
property.
know,
And
another thing that's stupid. These artisans, so they're volunteers from India. Okay. So just like we're volunteers, like I went down there and stayed there for a while. I was a volunteer. There's volunteers from all over the world, from Europe, from Africa, from the Middle East, and from India. Right. We used to stay in the same quarters as they did. Right. And when we were working there together and we were staying in the same quarters, it was like we were so interactive with them. We were like hanging out with the artisans, like we were all a part of one family, and we were
yeah,
literally just volunteering together, and it was awesome. And a lot of them had cell phones, a lot of them have laptops, right? So if you're saying this is modern day slavery, or if you're saying that they're being held or they're being whatever that what was the term that they used, um
imprisoned.
imprisoned and all this nonsense, do they get cell phones and do they get laptops and do they get to roam around and do whatever they want? Absolutely not, so again, if for those who volunteered during this time or volunteered period, they clearly understand that like this is complete BS.
Yeah, I mean,
There's nothing along those lines that was there.
when I was outside the gate, because you brought up the modern day slavery, when I was outside the gates, this guy came up to me from the media, and he was like, we're gonna do an interview. I think he said around 2 o'clock with the attorney, and can we go inside the gate? And again, I'm just coming there just because I happen to be there. Thanks to your mother-in-law, I came
Mhm.
to see what's going on, and I was like, I don't think you can go in, but let me make a phone call. So I called somebody inside the gates, and they're like, our attorney's not giving any interviews right now. We barely know what is exactly going on, right? And so they're not going to give any interviews. So I told the guy, I was like, yeah, no, no one's allowed inside the gate. I didn't say we're not giving it, but I was like, no one's allowed inside the gate. You can do whatever, outside of the property. So around 2 o'clock, the guy, he had another guy with him, sets up a camera. He had a microphone, and this other guy pulls up in a car, parks at the neighboring property, and walks up. And again, at that time, I was just like, it could be anybody, right? My mind is not, at that time, my mind is not in security mode of I got to figure out
Sure.
what's going on type of thing. I
Yeah.
was just like, they're doing their part. I got to make sure, if somebody rolls up to either let them in or not. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to record this. I have video of what the guy says, other stuff, but I started recording after he said this, which is probably the most like frightening thing I've ever heard in terms of how bad these people tried to portray this. He said exactly what you said. Is he's like,
Yep.
this is like modern day slavery. And when I heard that, like I was like, if I was, you know, black and I had family that was back then potentially, one of the slaves, this is like nothing close to that, right?
This is
You
nothing.
said,
It's not like everyone was here. They're volunteers. Do you understand the definition of volunteering?
yeah. I mean, we've
These
all spent,
guys, yeah, sorry to cut you off, but these guys, they work in the summers as volunteers. They go back to India and then they elect to volunteer again and they come back and then we all work together. It's your volunteers and they come back repeatedly, summer after summer after summer after summer. If this is modern day slavery, ask anyone, would you actually come back as a
no,
volunteer to volunteer? Would you actually come back? Absolutely not.
no, and you were talking about the trailers. All the trailers are the same, so it's not like you had a luxury trailer, and
Yeah.
that every you could walk into any trailer right now, and they all look pretty much the same, unless somebody like cleaned it up or decorated, or one's messier than the other. But they're all pretty much the same trailer. They were fed 4 to 5 times a day. They had tea breaks just like we do in India. They had tea breaks at 4 o'clock.
I'm gonna
You know
argue
what I mean?
they had better food than us because I remember once I was working and working on something like doing some type of sort of volunteering, and basically the artisans were kind of the experts, right?
Yep.
So they would train us and be like, all right, this is what we need to do, whether it had to do with stone or whatever it else is, right? So the artisan that was helping us, we actually became good friends. We would call each other all the time and everything, even after I was done volunteering. He was so good, man. He was a true volunteer. Like he would even if I even swore, he'd be like, dude, you shouldn't be doing that here. Like
Yeah.
he was that into volunteering, and he's like, man, make sure you're here for the right purposes and all that stuff. Nonetheless, really hot one day. And I was like, man, I don't want this Indian lemonade or whatever they were serving me. I was like, I don't like this. I was like, I just need like a good old soda. And he's just like, oh, you want a soda? And he took me to their food trailer and it was lit up. Like they had like the soda machines and you can get like a club soda, a Coke, a
Yeah.
Sprite, all this stuff. And I was like, this is awesome. And he's like, yeah, we come in here all day long and we'll get whatever soda or drinks or whatever we need. And they had like lemonades and all that stuff. Their food was all laid out there all day. So I used to end up going there to eat more than the volunteer food that we had. Like the artisans
Yeah.
actually had better food than us.
No, it's wild. I mean, like I said, my father's volunteered for the last 4 years, and he's been with them where while they're eating, whatever they need, he helps also. And so, there's a number of people that have helped and volunteered alongside with them. I've done stuff with them. I mean, if they were what this guy said, which I don't like repeating, but you just said it. he was telling you what to do,
Yeah.
right? That's not how, like, that's the opposite of what this is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He's showing you what to do. He's telling you you got to do this and that, and that's how it was. They were the artisans, or they were help. We were helping to get whatever done as a volunteer, and so it's there's so many things that we can go through. One of the things they said in there was about passports, and it was that BAPS took their passports. Now, to me, when I logically think about it, and this is from my own experience, my passport is never in my hands. If I'm in New Jersey and I fly back, it goes to my mom and she puts it away. You ask me where it is right now, I have no idea where my passport is, but she knows where it is. So I just got to ask her. Same thing in Maryland. It goes to my father in law. He puts it away. Where he puts it, I have no idea. It's with the other passports. And so, in the same sense, you have 200 volunteers that are staying here long term. I wouldn't expect that in these trailers that, again, they're not locked, so anybody can walk in, that you would want them to have these passports all over the place, right? And so BPS had the passports, and when they had to be renewed, I'm sure they made sure they got renewed. And when they went, like you said, they went to India all the time.
I've
Holding
traveled to.
passport, they wouldn't send them back to India and let them work through the winter. I mean, it's there's so many things that doesn't add up. And
So as volunteers, they would decide saying, okay, I'm going to come volunteer for 5 months, here in New Jersey, right? And they come. So let's say 5 months they're here for, but let's say 2 months in, they have some emergency and they have to get back, right? I know people that have taken them, they tell the organization naturally, they get their passport back. And before they go in, they take them shopping. They say, hey, let's go grab things for your family. And they'll take them shopping. They'll get a couple of days off. They can go sightseeing and all that stuff. And then the organization sends them back to India. They even pay for their plane tickets and everything. So it's absurd to think that this is like human trafficking.
yeah,
Like that is such an aggressive word. Like it's again, look at the Google Map images of the site. You don't there's no human trafficking going on. Like you see people walking around freely and everything. And there were times. So I remember during COVID, they did not let us interact with the artisans, right? But that was literally for their safety and our safety. In fact, even between volunteers, we didn't interact much. They said, if you're coming here and you're volunteering, make sure you have a mask on, make sure you keep your distance, don't hang out in large crowds, all that stuff. So that was like for their own safety. But this attorney lady, Swati Sawant, whoever she is, she's just twisting the heck out of everything. And
yeah.
clearly is just presenting things in a wrong way with a hidden agenda.
I mean, the day it happened, let's say it was about 35 trailers. I would say half of them had volunteers from across the U.S., American volunteers. Like there was
Yes.
doctors there,
Yeah.
right? And these people came in questioning everybody, thinking all 35 trailers were artisans. And then they realized there's a doctor here who makes more money than probably some of the guys questioning. And he's like, "No, I'm comfortable. Look at you can go through
I
the
don't
whole place and see it, right?"
I read an article that they were saying that they were luring these guys, saying that like, oh, you'll get a green card or you'll become an American citizen and all that stuff.
Hold on,
Honestly,
hold on, hold on.
that's how they lured them in. And they going to these doctors and they're like, hey, if you come with us, you'll get a green card. And he's just like, I'm an American
Let's
citizen.
let's not hear. Let's read the article. I'm just going to read the line because I did pull it up. Uh, these workers were enticed by the prospect of U.S. citizenship and intimidated with threats of police intervention and imprisonment if they did not comply with Swati Sawant. The
Wow.
press release cites the existence of notarized affidavits, video recorded interviews, and statements made in front of advocates as evidence support their assertions. So, I mean,
So
what you
how,
said is not you heard, it's what it is there,
so hey, New York Times, publish this now.
right?
Publish this. If you knew crap about what was happening on the day of and you published an article, that attorney that was interviewed somehow saying modern day slavery knew crap about facts because nothing had even unfolded. Now
Yeah.
things have unfolded and the truth is coming out. Where are the articles?
And I can tell you at the end of the day, when they started leaving, I saw, the gate opened and FBI agents started coming out. Each one of them slowed down, opened the window, and said, have a good evening. You could see on their faces what I think if they had seen the atrocities that this said, they wouldn't have been smiling in that sense, right? So I think even they realized once they went in, because, you talk about that line that they said they were intimidated. We have friends, American citizens, that were living in the trailers, and those guys can attest to the fact that these guys were like, "We'll give you citizenship," and these guys are like, "Well, a little too late, right? I already got it the
It's
normal way." So,
ridiculous. It's so
it's
ridiculous.
there's a lot of stuff that one again, if you only read the article, is bad. But if you don't know what the facts are, you don't know BAPS, you don't know the things they've done, that there's zero chance in the world that all of this is true. And we've gone through most everything to show that it's like I was talking to somebody the other day, and they talked about this recent article that a few months ago. I haven't seen it or found it, but they basically the guys that did leave from here and are potentially, they were took them to some hotel, whatever, and it said that you should see the faces of the artisans because we served them pizza and they had never had pizza before. I can tell you right now, we made as volunteers a brick oven pizza out of stone, and at
In fact
least
in
once.
fact, that was made by artisan volunteers as well. They helped make that oven.
Yeah, because we used the stone on the outside and the inside. We made sure and designed everything. But once a month or twice a month, we made pizza for them. I mean, I've been there myself at night
Yeah.
cooking the pizza. Right, I help whenever there's different things to serve. Everything, the food that they were given was from Indian culture, American culture, everything. I mean, they've had Italian food, they've had Mexican food, everything. And so for them to write that to say, maybe what they saw on their faces is they didn't like the pizza that these guys made. That's what I'm thinking, is that they didn't like that
In
pizza.
all
Because
honesty, someone would ask me like why separate food for them versus the US volunteers, right? Their food was so spicy, and I love spicy food, and I guess they
it's
love spicy food
ridiculously
as well.
spicy. It's not
It
just
was
spicy. It's
so spicy. That's why they actually had to create separate kitchens. But I love spicy food, so I used to eat out of their stuff all the time.
Yeah, no, it's next level spicy. I tried once and I was like, I can't, because well, there was a time where because when you do the pizza, you still serve a little bit of the rice that they like
Yeah.
the spicy, and so I had the pizza with them because we eat together, and I tried that. I was like, never again.
And it's
It's
like a
spicy, but
buffet.
that's what they like. You
You
we
can keep
want
going
to.
back.
Yeah.
You can keep going back. It's this is not jail where you're waiting in line with a tray and they give you one thing and they're like, go on. Like
Yeah.
it's a buffet. You can keep going
Oh
back
no,
as
we
many
we
times as you want.
everybody ate more than I probably ate more than I should have, and everybody
Anybody
was together.
anybody who comes to a BAPS Mundir would know that like food is the last thing that they
Yeah,
would
yeah.
hold back. So there's just one piece after another in this article that is so full of crap, right? This Swati Savan person had some sort of hidden agenda. Maybe she's just trying to make a name for herself or something. Um, you can tout her as a hero, but it is a wrong battle that she picked because it literally makes no sense. And if you're remotely in touch with the organization, you would know that this is all BS. And I'll give you one example. I have relatives that are kind of atheists. They don't believe in anything, right? I have friends that are also atheists. They don't believe in anything, right? When it comes to like a religious belief and that kind of stuff, they don't like, if let's say I donate X amount of money, they'll be like, man, you're just wasting your money. Why are you doing that? Like, you don't need to contribute. You don't need to do this. They kind of try to pull us back. So when this came out, in my mind, I was thinking, oh man, these guys are going to like take me for a ride. They're going to basically say, oh, see, we told you the whole time. Every single one of those people, they called me and they were like, listen, we know this looks bad, but we also know BAPS. We know how we've been treated when we're there. And I can tell you that this is complete nonsense, right? So folks that are, in one sense, against religion and really want nothing to do with the organization and kind of take every opportunity to tell me that, hey, you might be wasting your time here. They came back and said, this article makes no sense. What this Swati Silent person did, we have no idea what she's talking about because the organization is good and they do good things.
Yeah, yeah. And I think enough people have realized it more than enough. And you know, I don't think we'll have time to talk about it here, but I think the next thing we do need to talk about one day is after this happened. And I'm a big believer on events happen in life for a reason. And so I also believe that this event happened because after this, 12,500 volunteers from across the world came together to complete this temple. And their experiences, including you and I, what we've gone through after, wouldn't have happened if this didn't happen.
And
Now,
let me tell you, with those 12,500, there were artisans who said, "We're not coming with you." Right?
Yeah,
They were strong enough. They didn't look at their selfish motives. And I'm not trying to dog on the artisans that did go. Naturally, if you're presented with a lottery ticket, you take it. You're
you're
thinking of your
enticed.
family, your lineage. Like getting U.S. citizenship is huge, right? Around the world from anywhere. You could tell, with the number of people that want to come into the country and the line that we have for immigration. So, I understand that there's certain situations and they might take that opportunity, but hats off to those who stayed. And there was a lot of them that stayed that said, we don't want a part of this. We're happy here. And they actually stayed, and they were a part of the 12,500 kind of working together to make this thing be built.
Yeah, no, I was there the next day with those, I think it was 22 or 24 guys, and we were sitting just out on the lawn, and I think we were drinking some juice and stuff, and they were there, and you could see it. They realized, and they were happy. They were happy in the sense that they stayed, um, and just like them, just like me, they were sad in the sense of all the guys that did leave because I knew many of them.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
last to leave that day, the day before on the 11th, 3 buses left. I think maybe 1.5 were full, and I cried as they went out because I didn't know how many left, but if I could see enough through the windows, they were kind of blacked out, but I could see enough people in the windows that I was like,
Yeah.
"I know somebody on that bus," we didn't exactly know what they were gonna do to him, my first thought was maybe they're gonna put him in prison because of something,
Yeah.
and like, there's 100 things running through your mind, so I was sad about that, and you could see they were sad about a lot of their friends were in that, and they had
Yeah.
left. So, but they were very happy that they stayed, and we worked through them. After that, I've worked with them, and uh, it was surreal. I mean, it's something that you don't understand. But like I said, after that, the world came together, finished the temple October 23. We finished the temple. It opened, and thousands and thousands of visitors have come there, and I think they've all realized. So, you know,
I know people who, after visiting it, they just get inspired. They'll stop drinking. They'll stop smoking. A lot of them will have anger issues, and they actively introspect to say, I don't want to do all this stuff. So this is what the monument was built for. This is the end goal. A lot of people say, oh, you could have built 10 hospitals as a result of this. You could have built schools and all that stuff. But this is more of a preventative measure, right? Schools don't teach you to be a nice person. Unfortunately, they don't.
yep,
Schools really don't focus on you not being greedy and not having addictions and stuff like that. There's no organizations that really do that other than religion. So it has to be a part of society, in my opinion, to be preventative, to keep
yep,
order, and to, in all honesty, less people will have to go to the hospital if they're not chewing tobacco and they're not drinking
yeah.
and they're not eating the wrong things and kind of controlling
Yeah,
themselves,
you wouldn't need the hospitals and the prisons if more people were
Not as
peaceful
many.
and attended
Yeah.
their churches and temples and synagogues and all that stuff, but
The last thing that I want to bring up is, along with these 12,500 volunteers were people who were from all different castes, right? Another thing, that if you know the organization, caste really does not matter. It absolutely does not matter. There are people who have been initiated into swamis, and they're from all different castes.
yep.
Amongst these 12,500 volunteers, they were from all different castes, top to
Yeah,
bottom.
not just the artisans, I mean, we're talking about just regular people in the
Regular,
US, I
yeah,
mean,
everyone, absolutely.
I don't know what my caste is or if there was whatever that is, but there was 12,500 people from all walks of life, basically, right? You had, like we talked about, we had doctors, we had guys that owned 20, 30, 40 motels, millionaires that came and volunteered in the same trailers. And we had guys that were just getting out of high school and college
Yeah,
that were like, I'm putting life on hold, even though I don't have the means, but you come here, you don't need the means because everything is provided. And they spent a year and then they went back, finished school or got jobs. And everybody right now is happy with it. So, the casting is a weird, again, what's happened in India and how that's going is a whole different thing. But with BAPS here, India, across the world, you walk in, anybody can walk into a temple.
yeah,
Doesn't matter caste, creed. I mean, I've seen even in Robbinsville, every walk of life, every
yeah,
type of religious person has
absolutely.
walked in here,
Yeah,
right? And so, and every one of them have taken something back. And there's the casting is just is an odd thing. And to kind of try to go to the end, we should talk about the fact that, you know, we've talked about it. Now it'll be out there, but I think other people have to be able to openly talk about it because the negative is out there based on that one article.
Yeah.
There's a lot, but there isn't the people talking about their experiences because you and I are two of 12,500.
Yeah.
So we need them and the others that know that the organization is what it is to be able to openly talk about it. And, you know, you and I didn't talk about this before because we didn't know if we should or not. But I think we're at a point that I've seen too much of the other side that we need to balance that in some manner. And so to me, I think more people need to get out there and be able to talk about it.
I agree. I think people look at the headlines and they make past judgments and they automatically assume things. They barely read the article. Even if you read the article, they don't process, they take it at face value. You have to understand humans are writing the articles and there's naturally going to be a bias. And in certain situations, things do not add up, you know? And this is clearly one of those situations. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Like it just does not add up.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, just visit one of the temples and you'll see it. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
you walk into any temple, whether it's, you know, the second largest Hindu temple in Robbinsville or, you know, your temple in Westboro, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
It's much smaller, but you get the same feeling once you stand in front of those idols of Bhagwan and God, and there's the same feeling that you get here once you walk into that, and it's people experience it, and people have, and they still are, and they continue to. So I just feel like people should be able to talk about this and not be concerned as to what they can and can't say because it's there's too much good that has been
Absolutely.
done by BAPS, and especially even after this, it's not like the world stopped. It felt like it, I could tell you that.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
day after, I felt like, what are we going to do? And I went on vacation and came back, and there was a bunch of volunteers putting up stone. And when I went on vacation, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do when I get back. Right. And so you see this is that nothing stopped. It's people know, and the 12,500 from across the world came. Some spent 1 month and some spent 3 years, 4 years. So,
Absolutely.
you know, that'll be the next
It's a true inspiration. Like if
yeah.
anyone who is not even involved, if they just come and visit, like it is truly an inspiration. The story is mind blowing. It is truly mind blowing.
So I think we'll do a podcast on that next time, the 12,500 and some of the inspiration and what they've learned. There's a lot I can talk about, and we can talk about on that. So for now, I think this was one that I'm excited to have done.
Absolutely. I think we got a lot off our chest. I know I did because it's makes my blood boil every time. But
Yeah.
hopefully, someone takes some positivity out of it. That's the goal of our podcast: is to be more positive and not be so negative. And I know there were some aspects of negative, but hopefully the positivity kind of outshine that.
All right. Till next time.
Take care.
Bye.